Greetings, everyone. First and most important, I hope everyone's safe. I hope everyone is staying at home. And I believe together we're going to beat this virus together. And now, welcome back to the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children webinar on child protection. We are organizing this webinar together with our global partners, UNODC, United Nations for Drugs and Crime. My name is Guillermo Galarza, and I am the Director of International Law Enforcement Trainings at the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And I can't tell you, it's a great honor to host this panel today with our key experts to talk about a very important issue. This webinar is part of a larger series of webinars where we're discussing different topics as it relates to online child sexual exploitation and COVID-19. In fact, this is our 5th episode, and I can see that there's a lot of interest from the public to join these webinars. As I said, today we're going to talk about a very important issue, and that is specifically to where to report suspected child sexual exploitation around COVID-19. And we're so lucky to have partnered with 3 important organizations. Some of you may have worked with them. The first one is the International Association of Internet Hotlines, InHope, Child Helpline International, and InSafe. Now, I have the greatest pleasure of introducing you to our key guest speakers. The first speaker is going to be Mr. Denton Howard, Executive Director of InHope. Now, I have had the pleasure of working with Denton since 2009. Denton, thank you so much for being here and helping us out with this webinar. I think what we've done over the past couple of years with InHope is really tremendous, and I will look forward to continuing to work with InHope. We have Mr. Patrick Krantz, Executive Director of Child Helpline International. And then we have Mr. Carl Hopwood, Member, UK Council for Internet Safety. Gentlemen, welcome. We have about 1 hour, and we have to make the most of it. Each speaker will have about 15 minutes. Please type your questions on the right-hand chat box. Now, for security purposes and the Zoom moments, if you don't see that chat box on the right-hand corner, please type your questions on the Q&A sections, and we will try to address them at the end of the webinar. Thank you for being here. Denton, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. I want to just check the audio. If you give me the thumbs up, then I know you can hear me. Okay, good, we have thumbs, good. So first and foremost, what I'd like to do is share my screen with you because I have a presentation that I would like to share. First of all, I'll talk about introducing myself and everything, but first of all, today, guys, before I launch into who we are and what we do, I just want to talk about why we're all here today. I think we can all agree that we are using our Friday afternoon to be productive, and in this case, to combat child sexual abuse material or child sexual abuse exploitation, depending on where and when it happens. So if you like, I think I speak for everybody else, is that we all have a shared mission and we all want to work together to achieve the objective. So with that in mind, and hopefully if I can get Skype, this machine to work like it's supposed to do, we'll be moving along perfectly. So let me get this off the screen so that you don't get all interrupted with my stuff and half my presentation disappearing. So first and foremost, my name is Denton Howard, and I'm the Executive Director of InHope. Now, the title of my presentation here is where to report suspected child sexual abuse material, because everybody thinks about it, but it's important to know that when it's found, what we do. So in the context of this conversation, we're talking about the issue around COVID-19 and how it's affecting, one, the reporting of child abuse material, or child sexual abuse and exploitation in general, and who do we tell or how do you report it? So first and foremost, in regard to InHope, as an organization, we are fully open and we have maintained all of our hotline capabilities in all the countries in which we operate. Some have been affected to a limited degree in relation to getting to work because of limited working hours and travel, etc. But reporting operations have been if you like, continued and fully operational. And our infrastructure and the operational unit that operates, that I manage for InHope, we've all worked remotely, and we if you like, implemented our disaster plan. So I'm glad to say it worked. And so it's all good from that perspective. So again, before I get into what InHope does and how we do, I just want to get down to a couple of basics. And I know this may seem a little obvious, but if you find child sexual abuse material, or CSAM as we call it, we use the time, report it, don't ignore it. Because we try and get at the people, oh, somebody will take care of that, somebody should do something about it. If somebody finds it, it's their responsibility to tell somebody about it. So what I ask you is to go to www.inhope.org and to find the hotline that's nearest to you. So we've made it very easy. There's a clickable map, or you can select it alphabetically via the drop-down list if you wish. So with that, just a couple of things. This is a slide that I use sometimes in different presentations, but I just want to give you Guillermo mentioned 2009. I use the expression that we've been dancing for 11 years, myself and himself. And myself and Carl, probably similar or even longer. Patrick, I haven't known that well, but I know many people in this community. It's important as a body of knowledge. Now, I've been doing it for 15 years in various roles, but it's by working together and pooling knowledge and sharing knowledge is how we make a greater impact. So what do hotlines do? Well, first of all, the idea is we want to remove content rapidly, and I'm going to go on in detail about that in a minute. We want to contribute to the rescue of victims, okay? But in general, we want to work towards the objective of making the internet a safer place. Now, that's a lovely, cuddly, shared objective, but really we have to get down to business, okay? So how do we do that? Well, it's like, how do you make the world a safer place in general? When you have multiple actions, and hopefully the whole lot of those actions will contribute to the greater good. And from that perspective, we have a global network of hotlines. So for the people, and I know many people on this call may know what a hotline does, but for the people who may not, I just want to go through a couple of basics. So the first thing is we provide the public a way of reporting what they suspect to be child sexual abuse material or illegal material. Often, I have to be honest, some people report content which isn't. They may think it is, or there may be terminology around it to indicate, but even though it may not be tasteful, or it doesn't necessarily mean it's illegal. So that's an important distinction. But when somebody does report it, regardless of who reports what, each report is assessed by a hotline. And that hotline has trained, experienced staff who know what's illegal and legal and know the procedures in the countries. And we have a whole infrastructure that sits behind them. But then it's also forwarded to law enforcement. And if, depending on the country, what the rules are, that content is removed from the internet in cooperation with hosting providers. Now, that process is called notice and takedown. But I want to stress something. Notice and takedown does not mean deleting the content. It means removing access to the public so that that information is still available to the police and law enforcement for investigation later. We also track all of that information via our ICCAM system, which is a project that's funded by the European Commission. And I could talk about that for an hour, but that's not for the purposes of today. But a couple of things. I want to talk about what basically CSAM is. So you'll see on my presentation, there's a picture of a child, obviously head down, but I'm using that as obviously we do not use copies or images of child sexual abuse material in presentations. That will be 1, illegal, and 2, immoral, and 3, wrong, and so many other reasons. But I want to use it to make a point, is that every image or every video is a crime scene. It's evidence of a crime happening. Okay, so, and that's an important thing, and I want you to put that into the back of your mind, okay? Because behind everything there's a victim, okay? And the victim is often forgotten in discussion about policy and statistics and numbers, but in InHope, the victim is at the center of everything we do, okay? We look forward today that we find no new victims. We hope it happens sometime, but it is kind of the objective. But the faster we can get content removed from the internet, and by faster I mean measuring in terms of minutes, hours, and days, it reduces the amount of time that it can, if you like, that the child is available for re-victimization. Even though the picture might have been taken 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, every time somebody uses that picture or views it, that child in some way is being abused okay, or re-victimized. And also, we just want less of it spreading around. So the speed at which we get to that content, the better, the faster, the better. So hotlines are run by NGOs, they're run by governments, they're run by ISP associations, and they're also run by hybrids, in other words, combinations of those in various different countries. And honestly, which is best? There's brilliant examples of all. Ultimately, we don't care where it comes from. We care that, one, that they operate to full standards, and two, that they share the same objectives and standards and technologies that we have. So they all get reports. So a simplistic form of a report is what you see on screen. An anonymous report that arrives in via a web form. Somebody complains that they found a very strange website, in this case icmic.org, and they found a picture of 4 children. If you want to look at icmic.org, you will see 4 kids on the homepage. And the thing there is, I think it may be illegal, but I'm scared to tell the police, please do something about it. Okay. Now, reports don't always take that form, but that's kind of the message or impression that people try to make. And then that is, as I mentioned previously, that is then taken. Now, I could go on about the reporting mechanism for a long time and bore you to death, but today I'm operating on the 15-minute principle, so I'm going to keep it short. So on this slide, I've called it the value of in-home. So why is it important? Well, as I mentioned, CSAM, it sits on the internet, but the internet is not like a map. It doesn't recognize lines on a map. It doesn't recognize borders. It's transnational. So to combat it, you have to operate on a transnational basis. So with that in mind, we have 46 member hotlines in 43 countries to try and deal with that. And we're doing our best to expand that. And prior to COVID, we had a huge expansion plan for the next 18 months, but we have to figure out how we're going to do it now. But I think, and many organizations are in that situation. That network exchanges reports. Now, it exchanges reports because in most cases, you have, if a report is received in country A, 9 times out of 10, the content is hosted in a different jurisdiction. So the report is exchanged via our what we call our ICCAM system, and that basically allows instant exchange. And that is also connected with law enforcement so that new victims can be identified. Again, it comes back to the point that enables a faster action or faster response. So you'll see the word speed appearing here 3 times, well, actually 4. So speed in getting the content removed, NTD or notice takedown, speed in getting the evidence preserved so that police can investigate it, and basically speed is everything, okay? And I won't labor that point. So a question that is often, and again, I don't know about I haven't seen the breakdown of different organizations that are listening in on this, so I just want to give you a quick background. The questions that I often get asked, isn't this police work? Why are you doing it? Why isn't the police doing it? Well, most police are very, very busy. They have to deal with many different issues. They're also not generally specialists in this area. Also, most people won't tell the police because they're afraid, because there isn't an anonymous capability in many countries. So we take the anonymous reports and we triage them, because on average, and it varies a little bit year to year and country to country, but we use the sort of running average of up to 90% of reports turn out not to be illegal. Okay, so the point is, the police, if they were given all of those reports, they would have to go through 100 to find the 10. Whereas in this case, we can process the 100 much faster than they can and identify the true location, and then pass them the 10 valid ones so that they can focus on and do what they're good at. So our objective is to add value, speed up the actions, get the content removed, free up law enforcement resources so that, and I left this blank because it's important, I want you to hear it rather than see it, is so that they can focus on the victim and they can focus on the offender, okay? Now, I think you can all agree that that's a good idea. So for a hotline to exist, just so that you understand that we don't just allow anybody to set up a hotline. For any organization, regardless of their background, they need to have the support of law enforcement in the country, they need the support of government, they need the government support of industry, and they need a connection with the child welfare sector. We call that the 4-leg principle, similar to a chair. If you don't have one of the legs on the chair will fall over. We have learned over time that without all of those support facilities or stakeholder support, it doesn't work. So basically, why should you care? Well, as I mentioned at the very start, by being on this call, you're showing that you do care. I'm going to say again that I've said at the very start is that if you find child sexual abuse material, please report it. I want you to find, I don't know what country you're in right now, but I would like you to make sure that you do know which hotline operates in the jurisdiction that you're in. So I would appreciate if you would go to inup.org and find your nearest hotline and become familiar with them. Okay, so that's why you should care. But what I would like you to do now after we finish this call is, if you'd like and you want more information, there's my email address. Please come and talk to me. I'm not that scary. I don't bite most of the time. My communications manager insists that I tell you to follow us on social media all of the time. And we are currently using the hashtag reportit, which is a campaign just basically been running over the past month, which in communications has been terms and impressions on social media has been really successful. We got over 2 million impressions. I want you to also tell 5 other people about this crazy person talking on the phone to you today. The last point I want you to say is basically to stay safe, because we live in interesting times. We have to take care of each other and take care of ourselves. So I want to thank you for listening. And when you finish, go and wash your hands. So with that note, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand back to Guillermo. And I hope I haven't put you all to sleep. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Denton. I appreciate your time. Okay, we're gonna save the questions for the end. I still encourage everyone to write your questions on the Q&A section. I've been getting some via WhatsApp as well, but I do again encourage you to put them in the Q&A. Our next speaker, Mr. Patrick Krenz, Executive Director of Child Helpline International. I neglected to say that for the past 2 years, ICMEC has been really working closely with Child Help International under the End Violence Against Children Fund to build capacity all over the world. There are key strategic partners as well, and we look forward to continue working with them. So Patrick, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Guillermo, and thank you, Denton, for kicking off this important webinar. My name is Patrick Krenz. I'm the Executive Director of Child Helpline International. And I know that we have a rather mixed audience. Maybe you are participating in this webinar because you are a parent. Maybe it's for professional reasons. You are a government official or working in the child rights sector. I do hope that also my presentation will answer some of your questions and will give you some information of how helplines help out in this difficult time of the corona crisis. I will try to keep it short, also to respect the 15 minutes limit that we have been given, and to give the other speaker, Carl, the opportunity to do his presentation as well. So first of all, maybe something about Child Helplines and Child Helpline International. I hope that my screen is working. Oh, sorry about that. Could be unstable internet. In this presentation, I would like to tell you something about what a child helpline is. I would also tell you something more about the network of child helplines. And then more specifically, 2 more points, one around online child sexual exploitation and abuse, and the impact that COVID-19 or the coronavirus has at the moment on the services from child helplines. So first, what is a child helpline? As the word already says, most of the people think it is a helpline that you can know, a phone number that you can call. That is indeed the case, but the helpline is offering more channels for children and youngsters actually to contact them, to ask a question, to share their doubts, insecurity, or even to report some more serious things that are going on at school or in the house or with friends or with adults. So what is very important for a helpline is that it is easily accessible for children and young people. and that it is, of course, confidential. What we also promote as a network is to come up with, as much as possible, the toll-free numbers. The 116-111, for example, is a very important toll-free number that many helplines are already using. We are also, our members are open 24/7, and behind the child helpline service, there is a whole system, a whole network of referral services, so that we are able to link the best help to the question, doubt, or reporting from a child. It is not only by means of voice, we also offer options in terms of texting, messaging, and email, so to lower difficulties for children in terms of contacting helplines and ask their questions and share their doubts. Another important component of a child helpline is to put in the data concerning a call that they get. These data are very important in terms of the referral services that are given, but also you can imagine that the data, all the contacts that children have with the helplines are a source of information that can be used on a national level, and we as a network will use on even a regional and global level. These data are important to start advocacy and campaigning. So who is exactly then Child Helpline International? We were founded in 2003, and actually we represent a very big family. At the moment, we have 173 members, all child helplines, that are based all over the world in 142 countries and territories. So that means rather a very global coverage that we have. What we try to do is to strengthen in our way the child protection systems in the world, and that we want to amplify the voices of children and youngsters at a national level, but also on a regional and global level. This is a short overview from the membership. We are working in 5 different regions, and it is also important, like in the case of In Hope, that on our website, childhelplineinternational.org, you can find a map and all the members present with their contact details and phone numbers. So the first presentation from Denton was all about hotlines, and we are a helpline. So is there actually a difference? Yes, there is. As Denton already told you, the hotline services are very much linked to anonymously report the dangerous and online material that they suspect to be illegal. They also investigate the reports. Child helplines, on the other side, are actively listening to children who wish to express their concerns. Could be concerns, could also be questions about sexuality, more in general. And it could also, on the other side, be serious reporting of abuse and violence against them. What the helplines try to do at first is to listen, and second, to give some kind of support that fits with the question or doubt or concern that is being raised by the child or youngster. The link so that helplines are able to give is between the child and a professional to solve the question or problem the child is facing. Now, this webinar is more focusing specifically on the online child sexual exploitation and abuse and how that works in the case of child helplines. As I already told you, we as a network collect a lot of data from our members, and we try to analyze and then see what the trends are concerning the questions, doubt, and more serious things that children and youngsters are facing all over the world. In this data collection, we do that on a regular basis, and we bring out a report. You can read all about that on our website and look into the reports that we have brought out. And we collect these data from helplines, from our members, and we aggregate it into a bigger, higher level report. And we use different categories and subcategories for that. So if we look more specifically to the category around online sexual, child sexual exploitation and abuse, you see these kind of figures mentioned in our reports. This is just a part of the membership that has been reporting it. It is never 100%. But what you can see here are rather big numbers, especially when you look at the girls versus boys. When you look at the figures 2016 up to 2018, we are currently working in the 2019 figures, you might come up to the conclusion that it is decreasing, but that is a false conclusion. In fact, especially in these times where children are locked in their homes, not going to school anymore, it is obvious, and we have been getting in a lot of data around it, that OXI, as we call it, online child sexual exploitation and abuse, is increasing. So we expect that in our next report that will be brought out in the summer, to expect a great increase of this specific category. So looking at the crisis and the impact that it has on our child helplines, the first thing that we already noticed is that a lot of news have been reporting about an increase of contacts. A lot of children are calling up to 30 to 50% more the helplines that we have as a member. Each member is dealing with the situation in a context-specific way. Some of them are really able to scale up their services. Others are really confronted with problems in terms of the lockdown. They have to work from home, do the counseling from home, or have to respect different rules and procedures in the call center. So what have we been doing so far as a network in helping out our members during this crisis? The first thing we did is to bring out a needs assessment to find out actually what problems the helplines are facing and where we as a network could be able to help them out. And there were 77 helplines that filled out the needs assessment, and the others are still sending in their data. But what was most striking already is that many of the helplines are facing staffing issues. Also, in terms of technology and fundraising around that is something that we as a network will be working on the coming weeks and months. As I said, most of the members are working in a different way, remotely, and the referral system is different than usual. So we have to come up with smart solutions so that children really get the help that they need. On the right side, you see the data collection that is going on, and which will be different compared to the former years, in the sense that we have added an important component, more questions to the members to find out how the COVID-19 contacts are integrated and what they are really telling us about the problems and the questions and worries that children and youngsters have. Last but not least, I think it's important to go to our website. You will find a lot of resources, a lot of information, the membership itself. And if you have questions, do let me know. You can reach me at the account that is mentioned on this slide. Thank you so much for now, and do stay safe and do stay healthy.
Patrick, thank you so much for your presentation. We're gonna go ahead again. Keep those questions coming, please. I have written a few of them, and then we will try to answer them at the end of the webinar. Our next speaker, Mr. Carl Hopwood, member of the UK Council for Internet Safety. Carl, the floor is yours, sir.
Thanks very much, Guillermo. Good afternoon, everybody. Really good to be here. I'm just going to try and share my screen, and hopefully everybody can hear me as well. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, as Guillermo said, I am a member of the UK Council for Internet Safety. I also have the job of coordinating the helpline network that is part of InSafe as well. And just to give you an idea of what that is and what we do, we're a European network co-funded by the European Commission. And basically there are 30 safer internet centres across 30 different countries within Europe, and they have 4 key parts to them. So they have an awareness centre whose job is, like it says on the tin, I suppose, to raise awareness of online related issues, not just the risks, not just the negatives, but the kind of positive things that we can all get from using technology. There's also a helpline, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and actually many of our helplines within the InSafe network are also part of Patrick's network as well at CHI, which is great, so we have overlap. There's also a hotline element, and that's what Denton has talked about. So they're the ones that are dealing with the illegal, the child sexual abuse content online. And we also have a youth coordinator within each of our safer internet centres. And their role is, I guess, to consult with young people, to listen to what they have to say. Very often, for example, if a safer internet centre is creating a new resource, perhaps they will try and test that with young people, and it's not unknown that sometimes they've actually had to perhaps rethink a resource because of feedback that they've had. So in the helplines, we have 18 which are general helplines. They will deal with any issue that a young person has. It doesn't just need to be related to the internet, but we have 12 of our countries where the helpline has just been set up to be part of the Safer Internet Centre, and their role is to actually deal with specifically online related issues. One of the things that we have noticed from our members since the COVID-19 pandemic is that there have been expanded opening hours. They're recognising an increased need, and amazingly, I guess, in this situation, Patrick's already said, a lot of colleagues having to work from home now, but they are able to kind of extend the sort of times that young people can contact them. We collect data as well. We collect data from the helplines every 3 months. We process that. It's publicly available. I'm going to share the website with you at the end, but you can see the map on the right hand side of the screen there, and that's interactive and clickable, and you can look at different sort of categories of concern that people might be reporting against. So just a really quick overview, I guess, of what we see. You can see there that overwhelmingly the main users of the helplines are teenagers. Probably that isn't a huge surprise. It's worth saying that over the past couple of years, we have seen an increase in the 5 to 11-year-old group who are getting in touch. And I think that's probably just a sign of the times. I think younger and younger children, they are getting access, perhaps through a parent's device or a parent's old device that they've now passed on to their children. And it's great. It's sad, but it's great that they do feel able to get in touch. In terms of how helplines are contacted, overwhelmingly, and perhaps this is a bit of a surprise, but probably won't be to those of you who know that this space, phone is still by far and away the most common way of contacting a helpline. And I think, it does provide that sort of sense of privacy. Some children that we've spoken to have said, we didn't want to communicate by an app or by email, just in case there was a record of what we'd said and somebody might discover that. Chat, online forms and so on are quite key sort of methods of contacting the helpline as well. In terms of what children are getting in touch about, consistently for the last 4 or 5 years, cyberbullying is the #1 issue, and it's usually between 16 and 18% of all contacts are about that. We're actually just in the process of analysing the data from January through to the end of March in 2020, and we will be sharing that information probably in 2 or 3 weeks now. You can see some of the other challenges: love relationships and sexuality online, always between 8 and 10%. And I think, you know, it makes sense. Children are sort of growing up, they're developing, they're exploring their sexuality, and of course the internet is a place to be able to do this. I think it's worth saying at this point, in an ideal world, of course, you know, children and young people, adults, teachers, whoever, they would contact the hotlines when they needed to sort of report illegal material. This doesn't always happen. It would be great if it did, but it doesn't always happen. And we work really closely with the hotlines and will often make referrals to them. I just draw your attention down towards the bottom of the screen here. Sexual harassment, 4%, equally 7% of young people contacting us about sexting. Perhaps they've shared images, somebody else has then reshared them and so on. And sextortion, which is 4th from the bottom there, this was something that the helplines themselves said, can we have specific data on? We want to record the number of calls we get, because in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a really significant rise in sextortion. So where children and young people are being exploited, perhaps they have shared an image and they're told, if you don't share more images, or if you don't pay us a certain amount of money, then these images are going to be shared more widely. And so I think that is a constant challenge that we're all having to deal with. In terms of what the helpline can do, Patrick's already said a lot of this, so I won't dwell on it. They can, in some cases, provide counselling support. There are trained psychologists working with the helplines. They will, when necessary, make referrals to other services. They will help young people to remove content. We work really closely with colleagues in industry. And, you know, young people are really good at using platforms like Instagram and TikTok and what have you. But then if something goes wrong, they haven't necessarily read the privacy policy. They don't know the terms and conditions. They don't know what the community guidelines say. Our helpline staff can support them with that. Sometimes, you know, it is about saying, look, you need to go and speak to a parent about this. You need to go and talk to the police about this. And again, helplines can be supportive with that. One thing that I think is a huge bonus of what the helplines do, many of them now run peer counselling services. So actually young people getting advice from young people. You know, yes, we have, you know, highly experienced, highly trained counsellors, but perhaps if you're 14, getting some advice and thoughts from somebody who is 16 or 17 can be a little bit more empowering. What are we seeing in relation to COVID-19? A huge increase in calls. Interesting that in the first couple of weeks, we didn't see that. There was actually a decrease in many cases, but some of our helplines that I was speaking to earlier this week are saying they've had more than double the amount of calls, you know, given this period of time last year. You can see there in the bullet points what they're taking calls about. I think we're very aware that, as Denton, I think, said, everyone's shut inside, they can't get out. The domestic abuse calls are going up, going through the roof in some cases. I've mentioned sextortion and sexting. We've even had some colleagues in helplines saying that they are hearing from young people who are saying, I'm going to do the sexting thing because I can't be with my, you know, partner. And actually, can you tell me how to do that in a safe way? Lots of concerns around mental health and well-being. Also fears about, you know, what if my parents catch this dreadful disease? What's going to happen? We're also seeing that the chats are taking longer. I guess, you know, that we're also sort of seeing callers coming back several times to ask for more guidance and reassurance. Equally, colleagues are saying that perhaps things that happened a long time ago, which weren't front of mind, suddenly now are. Perhaps because, you know, we're not sort of having those other distractions. School isn't happening in the same way. We're not out with our friends and doing things with them. So we have more time to sit at home and think and ruminate on things. I mentioned working closely with industry, and we've been really grateful just in the last few weeks to have meetings for our helpline network with TikTok, with Instagram, with Facebook, with Snapchat. And I think these are really good because a lot of these companies, that they're doing things, you know, that they're providing resources, you know, they're being more careful about the kind of content that can be shared. They're signposting to content from the WHO, from CDC, and so on. I think it's also important to recognize that, like probably most of us on the call, we're having to work from home. So I think some of the big social media providers are having to rely on technical moderation, which is great, but it doesn't always get it right. And equally, the helplines need to be aware of that. If they do flag some content, perhaps there could be a slight lag in terms of how quickly it's dealt with. Again, we're very aware from some of the research that's come out from Europol in particular, that actually criminals are looking to see how they can profit from the pandemic. And I think in terms of the child sexual abuse and exploitation, we heard very, very early on in the pandemic that, paedophiles were talking about, the fact that this is a real prime opportunity for them. People are spending all their time at home. They're online an awful lot more. They're feeling vulnerable. They're feeling worried. Let's actually use this to go and exploit them. So I think, we need to get those awareness messages out there and let people know that they can contact helplines and hotlines where they will be given support. I think one of the things that concerns us is that particularly when you talk about online related issues, children and young people are quite reluctant in some cases to go and tell somebody what has happened to them. This was a bit of research that was done with nearly 40,000 8 through to 17-year-olds. This was a UK bit of research. These were the reasons that young people said that they wouldn't perhaps go and speak to anybody, particularly parents and carers. And you look at that and I think it makes sense. I think very often parents can give the wrong reaction to children. They see something online, or perhaps somebody does something to them online. They go and tell a parent, and the parent says, well, where did this happen? Instagram? Okay, you can't use Instagram any longer. And is that the right response if actually it wasn't the child's fault, it was somebody else's fault? This is slightly more reassuring in terms of data. So this was Roblox, the gaming platform. They found that 91% of parents said, yeah, if my child was being bullied online, they would come and talk to me. What's coming next, though? Only 26% of those children said that they would actually go and speak to a parent. Again, just a couple of thoughts around COVID-19. We think that perhaps there is a rise because children and young people, can't talk to their trusted adults. Some of them are in houses where abuse is taking place. They can't talk to their friends in the same way. And so they are turning to helplines, which is great. I think also we recognise that there's been a decrease in phone contacts because although that is the main way that people will contact our helplines, you kind of need to be in a safe space to be able to do that. You need to not be able to be overheard by somebody else. And so, perhaps they can't get out of the house to make that important phone call. One of the things that we do think is likely to happen is that post the pandemic, or at least post the lockdown, helplines are expecting an increase in calls when young people can get into a safer space and be able to talk about what's happened. Just one other thing before I draw to a close. The other thing that we're hearing a lot about from callers is they're worried about scams and fake news. That headline there that Google were blocking 18 million scam emails every day, I think just shows the sort of scale of the problem. And I think that this is where we link in to the work that our awareness centres do. If you remember at the beginning, I said there were 4 parts to a safer internet centre. So I think it's important that we talk about how to recognise fake news, but also about breaking the chain. The infograph there is another brilliant one from Europol. And I think, saying to young people, if you get some information, don't just share it on unless you're sure that it is genuine and comes from a verified source. I think we've all seen the sort of the scary posts on social media, and it is tempting to sort of share that with friends and colleagues, but let's make sure that what we're sharing is actual genuine, reliable information. So this is the web address for the whole of the InSafe network, and in there you will find information about how to contact your awareness centre and, perhaps more importantly at the moment, your helpline. we're doing a lot of work around COVID-19. All of the Safer Internet Centres are developing their own resources. You can see on the right-hand side there some of the different types of resource that are available. And I hope what might be useful to some colleagues who are on the call is that obviously, you know, we're 30 different countries. We have resources around COVID in all of these different languages. And so this is developing day by day, and we're constantly adding new content, which I hope might be helpful. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks to colleagues at ICMEC for arranging this, but hope it's been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. I appreciate your presentation. So thank you for staying in time as well. So we have about 15 minutes for some Q&A. And Denton, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. And the first question for Denton is, has COVID-19 caused any delays in removing takedown of CSAM material? And what are the challenges that you're seeing?
Okay, I knew you'd pick on me. All right, it's not fair. Okay, but that's a bit of a joke. Well, you should all be laughing at this point, but I'll let you off on that one. Just in respect of, has COVID affected our performance? It has affected in-hub's performance marginally, because of I mentioned earlier on my presentation that you know, just difficulties in getting to work and etc. and things like that. So on our end, it has slowed things down. Again, I don't have a number on this, but it's very marginal. And equally, the COVID has had implications between operational standards for both the police and for the provider. So, for example, if a service provider has been requested to do a content removal, then their abuse teams handle that. And just like everybody else, they have to be able to get to work to do their job, or because a lot of these jobs, you have to understand, a lot of abuse team jobs can't be done from a home, because they could involve dealing with content or have specific physical security requirements. So that's something to bear in mind. So I cannot give you a number, okay? But if I had to sort of throw it, I'd just say a very marginal effect.
All right, thank you. I'm going to continue to pick on you, Denton. The next question is, when you remove material, what are the chances that the material will be shared again? I understand that the image cannot be deleted once it's on the internet.
Okay, I was just, while Carl was talking, I was in the chat, I was answering some of the questions already, so I've seen one or two of these already. So can we stop content being re-uploaded? Currently, no, okay? I wish we could, but we can't. But there are certain mitigations. So I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of whack-a-mole. It's a very American expression. So the machine in the fairground where you have a hammer and the head of the mole pops up and you have to try and bang it before it disappears. Well, when in relation to child sexual abuse material, or any content for that matter, I mean, the copyright industry faced the same issue. It's if content is taken down, well, if somebody else has a copy of it somewhere else, they can re-upload it. So we have to try on one hand, try and just make life difficult and keep getting the content removed. But equally, I connected to a point that Neil Frey brother brought up on the chat, which is that there are various hashing technologies, photo-DNA being one of them, which has hash values which can, if you like, on the upload stream, they can block certain content from being re-uploaded. That's implemented by a number of companies. So coming back to the whack-a-mole scenario, if you imagine that game, we want to put as many hammers as possible on that game. So if we have one mole and 10 hammers, there's a chance that we will knock the mole out of it. Can we 100% stop it? Unless we got 100% control of the internet and insisted on everything being going through one central filter, honestly, I don't think so.
All right, thank you, Denton. All right, I'm gonna go ahead with Patrick. You have a couple of questions. Thank you, Denton, again. Patrick, the first question, how do you manage calls from minors who don't wanna share that information with their parents, but they need services due to their exploitation at home? Your Mike?
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, good question. What is very important in the services from the members, the helplines, is confidentiality. So a child really should feel safe in telling his or her story to the counselor, and then it all depends, of course, on the seriousness of the question or possible abuse that the child is sharing with the counselor. In some cases, or in most cases, actually, there will be referral purely for the child to a professional if need be. And in other cases, there will also be the option to somehow get a contact with a parent or a caregiver to give and to talk about the issue that is being raised. But it is very context specific, so difficult to answer it in a more general way, of course.
All right. Oh, so here's another one for you. Clearly, there seems to be discussions of the link between missing children and child exploitation. Do you also manage any cases or take on reports of missing children? And if so, what would that look like?
Oh, that is a difficult question. Missing children is a category that we are looking at in our data collection. We don't have had the data yet for last year, but of course, missing children is a category that does deserve additional attention. Where we as a network should look into. What I can say about this one is that we try with some other partners to do additional research. So besides the data collection that we do with our members, that we try to bring in new insights around this specific problem.
Thank you. And I have one more for you. Do members of Child Helpline International participate in a court hearings in giving evidence?
Well, I haven't come across that during my period as executive director. I can imagine that in certain cases, also depending the case, that the helpline counselor is playing a role, whether the counselor is really one of the witnesses in court. I don't know of those cases specifically, but for sure, this kind of cases do exist.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. Again, I appreciate our ongoing work and commitment together. Carol, you're up next. Thank you again for your presentation. Here's a question specific to you. Now that the UK is leaving the EU, does that have any bearing in any way as far as cooperation, information sharing, and laws? For example, the UK pulled out of the European arrest warrants. How does that affect in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Guillermo. I think it's a really good question, and you know, historically, the UK Safer Internet Centre has been a really key partner within the InSafe network, and I think, you know, we're all sad about the current situation. I think in terms of cooperation and the impact it will have, I think we feel very strongly that, you know, Denton, I think, mentioned it, you know, the internet has no borders. And I think, you know, we can't work effectively unless we do cooperate and communicate. I mentioned that, you know, we have 30 helplines. Patrick has 170, whatever it might be. And so there are lots of helplines in the UK that are not part of our network. But I think we very much work in the spirit of openness and collaboration. And so where I do think there could be some problems, I mean, a lot of the research that's done around online safety is funded by the European Commission, and clearly if you're in the UK that sort of isn't going to be open to you any longer. But I think in terms of working together as a group who've, you know, been established for many years now, we want that to continue in some form or other.
Thank you very much. Here's another question. You mentioned work with the industry, and like all of us, we value those partnerships. I often say we can never do our work alone. We have to work with other organizations, and most important, the industry. far as the industry, they provide support, they provide guidance, but also they provide those platforms. So a lot of education and awareness is going to have to be shared with the industry members. Specifically, what kind of ongoing projects do you have for the upcoming year or so, working with the industry companies like Facebook, TikTok, and others?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, again, I think most of the work that we do is around awareness raising. It's around, you know, sort of getting information out to key stakeholders. So parents, quite often teachers, children and young people, about the kind of the possibilities on particular platforms. So, you know, for example, we sort of had a meeting with Netflix quite recently. I'm sure lots of you are aware they've just updated all of their parental controls. You know, we will work with different industry colleagues around things that they're doing. So, for example, Instagram, we fed into one of their parental control guides, and it's a two-way process. You know, I couldn't agree more, Guillermo, as you're saying. We have to sort of work with them and have those partnerships. But I think it's not just about a one way. It's definitely, I think, both sides with something to contribute. Equally, I think we recognize that industry sits on a wealth of data. You know, that they know what young people are doing on their platforms, and when we will occasionally sort of have closed meetings where we talk very openly about some of the challenges that we are seeing and how that might manifest itself in their data as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of you for who participated during this panel. Again, I think this pretty much wraps up the webinar. I want to say thank you. Thank you everyone for participating. Stay safe out there. And without any further, this concludes the webinar. Thank you all, and we will try to answer your questions through our website or personal emails. With that said, have a great day. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.